Okay, guys, looks like we're live. Today's topic is moneyness of an option contract. Specifically, that can be classified into in the money, at the money, and out of the money, abbreviated ITM, ATM, and OTM. So at first, this might be a little confusing just because of the terminology, but I promise once we get through this video, it's a very simple idea to understand, and it's actually helpful when you're applying this in practice and in the real world trading. So let's first define it. In the money, at the money, and out of the money are describing the strike price of your option contract relative to the stock price. So remember, we think of the option contract as a piece of paper that's tethered to a specific stock. You can go out onto the market, you can buy the piece of paper, and let's just say in this case it's a call option. When that stock price that it's tethered to increases, so too does the value of the piece of paper, and then you can sell it for a higher price than you paid. Now, remember, that piece of paper, your option contract, has a strike price, and that strike price could vary relative to wherever the stock price is, and that's what we're talking about today, in the money, at the money, and out of the money. So let's first talk about in the money. So for a call option contract is in the money if the stock price is greater than the strike price. So let's just say you own the 135 call on a stock, and the stock is trading at 140. So your strike price here is lower than the stock price. Well, what does this mean? It actually has intrinsic value. So remember we talked about this in the last video. What is intrinsic value? Well, let's just say we were to exercise this contract, this call option contract, and we were able to buy the shares at 135 at expiration. Well, those same shares are trading for 140 on the market, so we can go ahead, turn around, and sell those shares for a higher price than we paid. So this has intrinsic value, meaning it's profitable if it's exercised. Now, for a put option. For a put option, the stock price for a put option that's in the money, the stock price will be lower than the strike price. Because remember, we make money on a put when the stock goes down. So say you own the 95 put and the stock is at 90. So in this case, our strike price here is actually above the stock price. And this has intrinsic value. And remember, we don't cover shorting here because I think it just makes it more confusing. But what your key takeaway needs to be here is that if this put option was exercised, you could turn around and buy those shares back on the market for a lower price than you paid or lower price than you got assigned at, and this would have intrinsic value. Okay, so let's just look at a few notes here about in-the-money contracts. So in-the-money options are the most expensive because they have intrinsic value. We just covered this. If, let's say you were assigned at 135, but at expiration and the stock's at 140, you can turn around and sell them for more. So the right to own them at a lower price than the market, this is going to cost you the most. So in-the-money option premiums are the most expensive because they have intrinsic value. They're usually not the best for small accounts. This might not be the case if it's like a cheaper stock, but on the more expensive stocks like Tesla or any expensive tech stocks, in-the-money contracts are going to be very expensive and not ideal for small accounts. And note, they have the highest delta. Remember that delta is the change in the value of the option contract per $1 move in the stock that it's tethered to. So remember that if we had, like, say here, a 0.7 delta call option, for every $1 that the stock price increased, we'd make $70. And in-the-money options are a lot like actually owning shares of stock because think about it here. For every $1 that the stock moves up, we make 70 in the option. And if we were to just own shares and the stock price increased $1, our share then would increase by $1. So these are pretty similar. Okay, let's move on to at the money. So at the money is pretty much just what it sounds like. The strike price is identical or very close to the stock price. And you could just think of it this way. It's at the stock price. The strike price is at the stock price. So an example, the stock's at 60 and you buy a call option with the strike price of 60. So these two are equal, so that would be an at-the-money contract. And again, these are not always the best for small accounts because they're expensive. So think about it. If you bought an at-the-money contract, it has a very high chance of actually going in the money. So these are going to be similarly very expensive, but not as expensive as in the money. Okay, so out of the money, this is our third and last one, and this is what we really care about if you're trading on a small account. For our Discord group, we trade a lot of out-of-the-money contracts because they're the most affordable for a small account. So out of the money. So for a call option contract to be out of the money, the stock price needs to be lower than the strike price. And for a put option contract to be out of the money, the stock price has to be above the strike price. Now, out of the money contracts only have extrinsic value because if these were to be assigned, they would be worthless because the strike price is above the stock price. And when the strike price is above the stock price at expiration, it wouldn't be profitable then to buy at the strike price because you could buy the shares on the market for a lower price. That's why these contracts are cheaper, because they only have intrinsic value. Remember that an option premium is equal to the intrinsic value plus extrinsic value. So if it only has extrinsic value, just by way of math, this is going to be cheaper. Okay. So let's go on to looking at an actual Thinkorswim option chain here, which you guys have not been introduced to yet, but we will, as I wrote here, cover this in more depth as the course sort of progresses, but we're still sort of in the theory part of it. So right here is an Thinkorswim option chain. So this looks like a control center. I remember the first time I saw this, I was very confused, but I think it's a lot more simple and it's very nicely laid out that you guys will understand it better after this. So right here, we have QQQ. That's the ticker that we're looking at here for the option chain. In the middle here, we have expiration. So those are our expiration dates and our strike prices right here. So as you can see, as we go from top to bottom, the strike prices are increasing. And we see here this color differentiation here where we have this sort of blue and black. So just note here that each of these rows is an option contract. These are all the different contracts. So you could see here, you know, the strikes are 20. So this is a contract. This is a contract. All of these are contracts, right? Different ones because they differ in strike price, but they all have the same expiration. So on the left side here, on Thinkorswim, the left side are your calls. Okay. So the blue is representative of the in-the-money calls. So note here, this is our current stock price. So the current price is 117. So note here that the contracts that have a strike price lower than the market price are in the money, as we just covered. So anything in blue here, the strike price is lower than this current price. And if they were exercised, then we could turn around and sell them on the market for more. Below that, in black, are the out of the money calls. And notice here that these strike prices are higher than the current market price. And if they were exercised, they would be worthless because, you know, you could buy the shares on the market for lower than you would at the strike price. And you could see here that in general, well, this is always a rule, in the money contracts cost more than the out of the money contracts. And we just covered that in here about why they're more expensive, because if they were exercised, they have intrinsic value. And you can see here, and this here, these, let's just say the bid, for example, is the premium. And this is how much we have to pay for our piece of paper. So you can see here that the premiums are decreasing in value as we go from in the money to out of money calls. And this is because these only have extrinsic, whereas these have intrinsic plus extrinsic value. Okay, on the flip side, here we have the puts. So on Thinkorswim, on the right, these are your puts. Okay, so now the colors are flipped, but this makes sense because remember, kind of we're working here in the inverse for the put option. So in black, we have the out of the money puts. And note here that these strike prices are lower than the current stock price. So if they only have extrinsic value, if they were exercised, they would be worthless. So these only have extrinsic value. In blue, then we have the in the money puts. And note here that the strike prices are greater than the current price. And this is just the opposite of what's happening on the call side. And we covered that right here. Okay, so again, you can see here that in the money, so we can see here that the general price trend here of the option premiums decrease as we move from in the money to out of the money. And I guess here this arrow might be a little confusing, but let's just say here that as you move from in the money to out of the money, option premiums get cheaper. And we already covered that on this side, why that is. Okay, so as a rule, in the money contracts are more expensive than out of the money contracts. And think about this, if they were exercised, we already did that. And let's just do a quick little quiz here on relating out of the money, at the money, and in the money to intrinsic value and option premium. And this is really what's going to help you guys in application. So let's just say here, you guys bought the Apple 130 call option. And no specific expiration here, but at some expiration. Okay, so here's your piece of paper, the Apple 130 call option. And that's your piece of paper. And for that Apple 130 call option, you paid $575 or $5 or $575 or $575, which is the actual price of the contract. But you guys know because of the multiplier, it's represented as $575. Now, if you guys look over here, the stock price of Apple is actually at $135. So, first question, is this contract in the money, at the money, or out of the money? So, let's just break this down very simply. So, our strike price is equal to 130 right here. And the stock price is at 135. So, because the stock price is greater than our strike price, this contract is in the money. Because if it were exercised, we'd be buying shares at 130 and we could turn around and sell them for 135. That has real intrinsic value. Okay, so what if we actually wanted to calculate the intrinsic or extrinsic value here? Well, let's look at this equation that we had from last video. We have intrinsic value plus extrinsic value is equal to option premium. So let's actually employ that formula. So I'm not going to color code it just for sake of time, but we have option premium, and this is how much you paid for the contract. And that's equal to intrinsic value plus extrinsic value. Okay, so we already know, so let's plug in what we know. We know that there's the option premium. We already know what we paid because if you were actually looking at the chain, these are all the prices you'd be paying right in here. Okay, so we paid $575 for this contract, this piece of paper. And we want to know, of this 575, how much of it's made up of intrinsic value. And we already know there's intrinsic value because we said that it's in the money. These are the only ones that have intrinsic value. And we know some part of it's made up of extrinsic value. Okay, so recall, intrinsic value is equal to stock price. There's my good spelling. Stock price minus strike price. So in this case, the stock price is 135 and our strike price is 130. So that's equal to 5. But we multiply by 100 and that's equal to 500. So right there, we have an intrinsic value of 500 because think about this. Just like I said before, if you were to exercise this, you'd buy here at 130, you'd buy the shares at 130, and you can turn around and sell them at 135. So that $5 difference times 100 shares, there's your intrinsic value. So we paid $575, 500 of it is intrinsic value. Now, just by way of elimination, what does our extrinsic value equal? Well, 575 minus our intrinsic equals 75. So remember, this 75 could be due to market expectations, IV, etc. So that goes into in the money, at the money, and out of the money contracts, as well as relating it back to intrinsic value, extrinsic value, and option premium. And we introduced a little bit of the Thinkorswim option chain, which you guys will be seeing a lot more of in the near future. So I hope that helps, and I hope you guys left with a better understanding of this topic. See you in the next one.